how many years were you working at a volunteer? So you mentioned internships, but like semi-pro before you landed that first full-time contract.
All in all, about 3 years, and then went back to school. So 4 years, and then US ski team was my first full-time role. So you have the luxury of kind of being a little more selective with where you're at. Pick places where you feel aligned with the mission. The entire currency that you gain from doing your internships, obviously there's technical knowledge, but it's also like, do will the people there tell their friends working in full-time roles that like you crushed it, that like they
Yeah.
would that like they'd be comfortable handing you the keys, that they can vouch for this person is professional, this person knows their stuff, and and this person's likable. Like those three things are like those are kind of the currency you gain from those internships.
So maybe the first time you work with track and field or the first time with ski athletes to NBA athletes, how do you sort of like to ascertain where the group's at, what they've been doing in the past, and then start to bring in your principles?
So the first thing that I'll do, especially with the development side of things, is look at kind of successful senior athletes in that sport, look at some of the habits, look at some of the background, obviously take as a population kind of where these metrics are at. And then for me, like with the ski team, there's a lot of endurance, a lot of strength, a lot of power. And to me, I was like, okay, well, I think the missing piece from what I was seeing was some kind of emphasis on reactive strength, elasticity, because that had been loosely, reading some papers, loosely correlated to reduced injury risk in slalom skiers.
What are some of those signs that you might use as a coach to recognize like, oh, today might not be the day to bring in, maybe more advanced plyometric progressions or more high intensity loading? And what would be some of the cues for you, but make those decisions?
First and foremost is plan and program intelligently, right? If I know I haven't hit you with anything hard enough in the previous 2-3 days that we should be carrying a ton of fatigue, then like we're gonna go. What I would do with my with my skiers, for example, would the first thing that we would do for our summer training when we were starting to warm up, we would stand in a circle, everyone on one leg, we'll just chat and toss a med ball around, standing on one leg, just for a little bit of lower leg work, just a little bit of, okay, the group's checking in. You can start to get a bit of an idea of where people are at. Okay, the bubbly kids are bubbly. Okay, the quiet kids are, quiet. This creates a checkpoint. And then if we notice anything there, we kind of triage from there. It's like, hey, notice this. How's this? How's that? Did you sleep? Did you eat? Did you skip breakfast today?
It's interesting that the standardized warm up, is that something that players would, maybe there's a warm up on the TV screen throughout the gym, they're preparing themselves and going through at their own time? Or are you talking about like a structured warm up that you're taking them through?
Yeah. So with the skiers, it was about 10 minutes because we just had more time. In the summer, if they're in Park City, there's no snow. And so that was a 10-minute warm up, multi-directional. You're hopping, you're skipping, you're lunging, all these things, some mobility. It's an adaptation of, it was an adaptation of Altis warm up. With the NBA guys, it was a lot different. It was shorter because you just have so much less time, and you have you have a lot less of their attention. I don't know if people were just watching the clock or if it was like some internal timer in their head, but you get the 4 minutes. You get four good minutes, and then guys are starting to notice, all right, this is kind of, like this is starting to go on a little longer. And so, it's asynchronous. You got 4 courts, you got 15, 18 players. And so some of them have already done full workouts. Some of them just rocked up, and this is the first thing they're doing.
And what about other cultural sort of behavioral considerations that you've had over your career with any organization you've worked in that you have to navigate, I guess, when you're working with diverse athletes?
I'm quite big on and respecting kind of the organism environment interaction. What behaviors is the environment driving? Behavior is just going to be a logical reaction to the organism and the environment. So, for example, more older, more elite players are going to be treated differently than younger players, right? The principle is that what these more older, more elite players decide to do with the power and the freedom that they have, how they decide to act, that's going to set the standard for this is what it means to be elite, right? And there can be these kind of false attributions, but those become your status symbols. If your status symbol is, well, this guy who's on a max contract is a dickhead, and everyone just lets him be a dickhead and no one bothers him. Everyone leaves him alone. He doesn't have to do A, B, C, X, Y, Z because then that's what it means to be at that level. Well, I'll kind of know I've made it when I can tell Chris to F off and he just F's off or he just like stops bothering, like stopped asking me to do stuff. You have to be very cognizant of that. That's like where culture will go to. It's like you're going to, especially in such like a macho environment. The NBA was my first experience working with an all male sports team.